Hello, this is a prepaid collect call from
Byron.
an offender at the Eastern Reception and Diagnostic Center. You may start the conversation now.
This is A Mind Unconstrained. I'm Byron Case, an imprisoned writer and poet. I just entered my 25th year of a life sentence for a murder that I didn't commit. Prison can be tough, but one thing that's helped sustain me for the past 2.5 decades has been my writing. I've published my work in magazines, literary journals, and anthologies. I also blogged from prison for quite a while before launching A Mind Unconstrained. I think of this podcast and its companion Substack as evidence that in spite of my sentence of life without parole, I don't have to think or live like a lifer. My mind is free to wander. And it wandered into a poignant topic this week after Andrew M.G. sent me this message. He writes, "What have you observed in your bubble there about how differently inmates are treated depending on things like race, orientation, or even identity if such privileges are even allowed? And comparing that to your experience and how things would have gone if perhaps you were a little bit more tan. With all of the societies and groups and activities you get to be a part of and create, is upper management, I don't know what else to call them, haha, as receptive to someone maybe not as white, affluent, educated, etc.? And what does that say about a hierarchy amongst the prisoners themselves, instead of the typical big muscle Joe runs things here, like you see in a movie or a show? I would love for you to cover this at some point if it fits with what you wish to present to the world through your media empire." Well, first of all, Andrew, thanks for listening. Thanks, too, for acknowledging the sprawling empire that A Mind Unconstrained is gradually becoming. I'm definitely proud of it. But you had a serious question, and that deserves a serious reply. So here goes. Times change, and societies change with them. One year's taboo is the next year's customary, or hell, even legally required moray. Culture is just the visible manifestation of a group's ideas. After new ideas are displayed often enough, and for long enough stretches of time, they can reach a certain level of popularity, and that's cultural evolution. Prison culture isn't immune to perspective shifts. Those shifts just seem to come more gradually. I've heard it said, and I think it's pretty close to the mark, that prison's about 20 years behind the rest of American society. Case in point, 2004 was the year that Missouri Department of Corrections finally allowed inmates to buy CD players and to order CDs through the mail, which I think was ironic because 2004 was also the same year that Amazon stopped accepting checks, and that happens to be the only payment method that is available to Missouri prisoners. Wah, wah. In this echo chamber of bad intentions and worse ideas, all the racist, misogynistic, homophobic, and generally bigoted garbage that you've heard spoken in your lifetime gets crammed into a single day. Have you ever seen a marshmallow cooked in the microwave? This is like that, except the marshmallow is made out of human prejudice, and you're in the microwave with the thing as it blows up. Repeatedly, every day. Spoiler alert, I'm not going to say many positive things about prison culture in this episode. But there are some interesting things that go on within these razor wire confines as far as prejudice is concerned. And I'd like you to note that I said interesting, not good. And that's a key point, because interesting is that, just that, a point of interest. I don't know if you know, the Chinese have a curse, may you live in interesting times. And to them, the meaning of interesting is loaded, and that's exactly how I'm using the word now. So please remember that as we move forward. So I used to have a job in the prison kitchen. And like most kitchen work, it was hot, messy, and completely thankless. My position there was linebacker, so I would set up the serving line and keep it stocked with pans of food to make sure that none of the servers ever had to stop ladling for longer than a couple of seconds. And then if we ran low on anything, I could just run and go procure more. And that was the entirety of my job description, and I fulfilled my duties well. Maybe too well. Have you ever heard of the curse of competence? That's where you basically show a high level of ability and efficiency at work, and then the recognition that you get is being made to take on more work. And this usually results in a feedback loop that ends in your eventual burnout, or maybe your head explodes. Either way, no fun. Anyway, I did a good job of keeping my serving line running smoothly, and the kitchen staff were always asking me to do more. So it was, Mr. Case, can you take over in staff dining while Simmons goes to his medical appointment? Or, Mr. Case, would you take these pans to cooler 3? Or, Mr. Case, we need you to come in on your day off to work the dish room. So obviously this got really old really fast, and I eventually confronted the supervising cook. I was like, why is it you've got all these guys sitting around the kitchen doing absolutely nothing, yet you only ever pull me to have you do this stuff? Her answer tipped me right the fuck over. She said, oh, we don't expect as much out of the black guys. Now, two things. One, there were both black and white inmates in that dining hall sitting around doing nothing. And two, it's usually not that overt, but that's basically the attitude among members of the staff here. It's not malice, though. It's annoyance. They have this obscene perspective that black inmates are less capable, or that they're less intelligent, or have less self-control. And the situations that this leads to can be kind of insane. So black inmates, and mind you, I can only speak about what happens at this facility. I know that racism is overt and often brutal in other prisons. And here it's different. I don't know why. But for some reason, Missouri is just a little bit different. Black residents get away with things that guards would issue violations to white or Latino residents for. And I'm not talking about serious infractions like stabbings, escape attempts, and such. I mean, that pretty much goes for whoever does it. But, for example, if a white inmate makes sexually suggestive comments to a guard or teacher or cook or member of the medical staff or any woman who works here, then a troop of heroes almost invariably sweeps in with handcuffs and a one-way trip to the hole. If a black guy does the same, well, I've seen courtships blossom between a staff member and a black resident over a period of weeks and sometimes months with no repercussions. And meanwhile, other staff members, I see them, they sit by and watch, sometimes with indifference and sometimes with obvious amusement. I've even heard staff joking about it. When the lovers eventually get caught, and they do eventually get caught in some act or other, then it ends. Or it ends when she gets busted bringing him in contraband, or maybe he's finally put under investigation and transferred to another facility for staff familiarity. But the point is, it goes on. And I can only assume that cook's words from all those years ago still apply. That prison staff basically expect black residents to act out, and so they allow it to happen. So you'll often hear racist white inmates say that the prison staff cater to black guys. If I had $1 for every time I heard someone say that, I'd be well on my way to buying my way out of prison by now. But there is a shred of ironic truth to it. Here's the thing, though. The so-called catering that they're talking about is not because staff favors black people. It's because of their prejudicial expectations that black residents act like animals. I'm not going to lie. Talking about this stuff makes me uncomfortable. Just explaining how racism works in the prison context risks me sounding like an apologist. I'm not. I hate racism. I've also spent more than half of my life in an environment that puts race at the forefront of almost every interaction. So I see racial issues a little differently than people outside of prison do. Disparity makes up part of the picture. The black prison population in the U.S. is almost 5 times the white prison population. Imprisoned white people are the minority. The facilities where I've been confined take pains to preserve racial quotas. It's usually like 50-50 when they're hiring for jobs. So they're addressing racial inequality by putting a nice even number on things. But you don't need an advanced degree to see that half, 50-50, isn't equal. White people, who make up roughly 35% of the prison population in this country, still get half of the jobs. Now that's a fractional advantage, but it's still an advantage. And the reason that it's being done smacks of disingenuousness. This is a system just trying to avoid lawsuits through half-hearted appeasement efforts. And as far as my own privilege goes, well, I mean, Andrew acknowledged the surprising things that I've been allowed to do in spite of being a prisoner. I was able to learn how to record, edit, and composite video. Then they made me a production manager and let me run what was basically a small TV network here in the prison. I ran 22 channels. I mean, not by myself, but I was in charge of the group that did. And that's no small thing. I'm trusted to the point that I can be present for important conversations between staff members, and sometimes they take part in them and have a say in the decision-making process. I get to make suggestions. I get to design and teach classes. I get to access technology that almost no other prisoner can get near. And then there's all the personal stuff, like being left alone as I publish my writing and record this podcast. And these are ventures that a prisoner who's black or brown might run afoul of the facilities administration if they tried them. My dad, when I was growing up, he told me one time, we're not rich, but we're rich in culture. As a kid, my family didn't have air conditioning. We didn't have colored TV, a clothes dryer. We didn't have even very nice furniture. I wore fairly cheap clothes, but I still saw about 90 Jamaican sunsets before my 9th birthday. I rode more trains across Europe than I could count. I got to take part in art classes, take private lessons for classical violin, screen foreign, independent, and classic films. We could have had all of those modern conveniences, but my parents spent their money on experiences over stuff, and they taught me to value certain things that, when I talk about them now, I guess if I'm being completely honest, make me sound kind of hoity-toity. All of this is to say, I know that I present myself well, and when I was young, everybody said I acted a lot older than my chronological age. My parents always encouraged me to question authority. And so this makes me a little fearless when it comes to speaking with people in power. And these two traits alone are born of privilege that comes in no small part from being born white in North America. So when I talk, when I pitch an idea or when I'm going for a job, like there's a few factors that are working for me. Erudition, I mean, I speak well. Experience, I've seen some shit and learned from at least some of it. And yeah, it helps being a decent-looking pale guy in a society that rewards A, men, B, attractiveness, and C, whiteness, maybe or maybe not in that order. So the short answer, Andrew, as I alluded to earlier, is that I don't know how much or how little my race or my perceived affluence or the education people might assume me to have, which you might remember I wrote about in a recent Substack post, what they have to do with the success that I've found in this environment. I mean, it's not like I can go back and try it all again as a person of color. I'm stuck with what I've got. So what I do know is that if I can remain aware of how much privilege I've really been given, then I can be humble about the unjust gap that exists between my status and the status of the average prisoner here. It pisses me off, the idea that I have come into this place and I am sort of given a level of equality and a level of neutrality that is sort of baseline for our culture today. And yet, other people, especially people of color, don't get that privilege. And there's nothing that I know to do about that. All I can do is just sort of keep my head down and keep trying to do good for everybody. And I think if more people did this, I don't know, maybe someday we'd all get a taste of privilege. That's it for Mind Unconstrained this week. I'm Byron Case. Thanks for listening. If you like what you heard here, new episodes drop on Fridays. You can also direct your browser to amindunconstrained.substack.com and subscribe to my newsletter, and you'll get a new post in your inbox every Wednesday. I love getting questions or suggestions for future episodes, and comments as well, so you can leave all of those on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, or wherever you happen to listen. And ratings, reviews, and shares really help to push A Mind Unconstrained further into the world, so I really appreciate those. Until next time, may you be happy, may you be healthy, may you be safe, may you be at ease.
The caller has hung up.